Welcome to Less Clutter, More You, a podcast that travels with you through the journey of letting go and creating order so you can start making more room for what matters most. Together, we'll go beyond the basket to start unlocking your next level of embracing your physical and mental space through mindset shifts and action steps. I'm your host, Maggie Britton, professional organizer, clutter coach, wife, and mom of four, and I am so glad you are here. Sometimes you see some things on social media that just hit wrong. And something I saw this week inspired this episode. And I'll talk and definitely say what I think it was a do and do not do later in this episode. But we're going to dive into some of the top things that during your decluttering journey, during your goal to get organized and create space in your life, things that you maybe shouldn't be doing or things that you should be doing. So let's dive in. Don't rush it. It is a process. So don't rush the process and instead take your time. You're going to need the time to work through it physically, mentally. You want to allow your space to give you feedback so that you can understand why you had these things that you're going through and start to think about why you're doing this now and what's the next step. So if you're rushing, you don't allow for that time to think about it, to think about the clutter. And anytime we can slow down and get intentional and mindful about what we are actually doing and the process that we're going through and the journey that we are on, that is going to give you more feedback for down the road and the next time you have to make a decision than it would if you were to dive in and speed away and just go for it and start pulling things out, making quick, rash decisions without thought. So don't rush it. Do allow yourself to take the time. This is not going to be happening overnight. Okay? Embrace that. And don't feel the need to go big, but do start small. This is not a TV show where we're cutting to break, cutting to commercial, and coming back, and an entire room is now decluttered and organized. That's not real life. And if you are doing this on your own without help, I cannot stress the importance of starting small. And I mean as small as one box, one drawer, one shelf. Start small. And depending on your layers and levels of support that you have brought in and that surround you, then you're able to do something bigger. That's why I have a team of professional organizers, because I started out actually doing it on my own. And as one professional organizer, I realized I needed a team of professional organizers. And this is what we do for a living. So if you're going to start on your own, don't go big, start small. Because when you go big and that dopamine, that good feeling hormone that starts to go as you're decluttering wears off, then you may be left with a room full of items that now house you in complete overwhelm and ready to quit, walk out, and shut the door. And if this sounds familiar, you're not alone, because a lot of times this is what happens. It's not that people are calling me to help them do something they haven't already tried on their own. It's just that they have tried. They set their goal to an expectation that someone else may have shown them, set for them, but you need to recognize your capacity in your ability to go through this journey and work through the process slowly on your own. Also, don't start with the sentimental items. Do start with the easy stuff. Even though sentimental items might be the largest amount of things taking up the space in your home, until you have successfully built up and strengthened that decluttering muscle, it's going to be harder to work through that process of letting go of the hard stuff. So start working out that decluttering muscle and do some of the more obvious things. Trash, expired food, shoes that have a hole in the toe, or clothing that you know your child is 5 sizes past. What are the obvious things in your space that no longer need to be there? Start there. Don't start with the hard stuff, because what you are building and strengthening through starting small, taking your time, getting rid of trash and recycling and all that more obvious stuff, you are just signaling to your brain that you've got this. And when you're up against the hard stuff, now you have something to reference. Now your brain knows, wait a minute, I'm not so sure I have control because we've been here before and she's got this. You've got this. So start with the easier, more obvious stuff. Get in the habit. Keep doing that over and over and over again. Build those muscles up and then work your way into the more sentimental, emotional stuff. And that goes for any form of clutter. That always, every time I'm talking about something, it always relates to any form of clutter. So if you're dealing with something that's on your calendar and not something that's on your home, well, let's get rid of the stuff that's easier to get rid of first than some big commitment that might take a longer time to process and work your way and step back from. Where could you eliminate smaller amounts of more obvious clutter in all forms? The physical trash, maybe it's the doom scrolling on the phone, maybe it's the lack of confidence in yourself. There are different forms, but any way that you can start with the small stuff, start with the obvious stuff, that's going to get you further and take you through the process instead of burning you out after just beginning. And then once you start to actually dive in and you now have cleared some of the clutter, what are you going to do with it? Is it just going to stay there? Don't leave it in your home. Do schedule a drop-off, schedule a pickup. So once you have identified what the clutter is, move it along. Send it out. Make a plan. Set a deadline. Where is it going to go and how are you going to start to prevent it from coming back in? And then when you have created this space, after you've decluttered, don't feel the need to fill the space and shove things back in because there is space or time or room and clarity in your brain. Make sure you are systematically adding the things back in. Sort them, categorize them, and put them back with thought. Don't just throw things back to fill the space that you've just cleared. And then the thing that I saw on social media earlier this week that I was talking about a little earlier was a video that was meant to be funny. I didn't laugh, but it was a woman folding her husband's sweatshirt. And then after it was so lovely folded, she threw it in the trash and went on her merry way. So what I don't want you to do when you are working through your decluttering journey and your organizing goals is to make decisions for other people's items, other people's commitments, other people's thoughts. That's for them to work through. What I want you to do is to start with the clutter that's affecting you. Start with your own items. Start with your own commitments. Start with your own thoughts. You can lead by example, but if you start to make the decisions for somebody else, it is going to backfire. Focus on you. This is about less clutter, more you. It doesn't mean you can't have a conversation with somebody. It doesn't mean you don't need to find a balance of being a parent with a child as you're decluttering. It doesn't mean that you can't share the benefits that you have been experiencing from living with less clutter. But it does mean that you cannot make the final decision about somebody else's things. Of course, there are exceptions to these rules, and there are situations where you are left with no choice but to make these decisions. But I serve this as a public service announcement. Please do not throw away somebody else's personal belongings without their permission. Now, one more thing. After you've decluttered, after you've made space, it goes back to that, let's not throw things back in just to fill it. If you're decluttering your physical space, do not start the process at the store buying bins, baskets, storage containers. This is a move for the professionals, someone who's been down this road a few times and can identify what a space is likely going to need because they have done it on numerous occasions. What I would love for you to focus on is decluttering the space, then identifying if there is even a need for the baskets and the bins. You may find that that's actually not even part of the solution. And most of the times, it's not. So don't go buying bins and baskets. Start decluttering first instead. See what space you're working with. And then if there's a need, make your measurements, do your research, and make a mindful, intentional purchase, because we know what happens when we're just buying things on a whim. They end up in the pile of the clutter that we're already dealing with at home. So those are just a few starter do's and don'ts when you are working your way down this decluttering, curvy, windy road. But keep at it. Start small. Take your time. Make the space, be intentional, and don't get discouraged. Don't compare your journey to somebody else's. Set your own personal goals, set your own personal space, and reflect on your personal progress, because that looks very different to every single person, everybody's space, everybody's thoughts, how they're spending their time, their different routines and habits, and what their day-to-day looks like. You cannot compare your journey to anybody else's. You may find inspiration and motivation through working with somebody else and having that support and encouragement and a goal to reach for, but you cannot compare your progress to somebody else's. So hopefully those are a few things that you can shift if you're doing something that maybe is not ideal for this journey, this path of living with less, and use that, shift your mind, get into action. Thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If after listening you have gained just a boost of motivation to start thinking about your clutter and taking action to clear it, then I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode and leave a rating and review so we can continue to grow and inspire others just like you. In the meantime, I'll be here cheering you on your next step forward with living with less clutter and more you.